Tracking grant monies in Procare can be done differently depending on how the grant monies are to be spent and which Procare modules you have. The ideal method involves depositing the grant funds into a separate bank account and tracking all expenses through Procare's Expenses and Ledger module. If some of the grant funds are used to provide tuition scholarships, you track those as tuition credits in the Family Accounting module. Then periodically transfer funds from the special grant bank account into your regular bank account as needed. We'll examine both scenarios in this video, beginning with the Family Accounting module by itself, followed by the Expenses and Ledger method. Before we begin, let's examine the configuration elements we will want in place for either method. So beginning at the Procare home screen, we'll go to Configuration and System. The first place we'll look is in Accounting Management and Chart of Accounts. Double-click. So I've added a special asset account here, the United Way Grant account. This is going to be the special bank account for depositing monies into when we receive a grant check. Additionally, in the revenue, I've created a specific revenue source for United Way funds. Right here, 4060 United Way Grant revenue. So those are the two accounts we needed to add to the chart of accounts. The next thing we need to do is designate that asset account as a bank account, and I've done that. So I go into the bank accounts, make sure I pick that asset account, and I've also designated it as a checkbook. This will allow me to use this bank account to write checks against when I use up the grant money for an expense, such as school supplies or any other authorized grant expense. In addition to being a bank account, for each school where that bank account applies as a deposit account, I will want to go to the Family Accounting section and go to Deposit Accounts and make sure that I've got that bank account designated as a deposit account for that school. A couple of other things we'll want is in the Family Accounting charge and credit descriptions. Under Other Charges, I've created a special charge description here called United Way Grant Revenue. This is so that I can post a charge in this amount to recognize the revenue coming in when we get the check. I've also created a credit description to apply as scholarship credits against individual family accounts when we want to use up that United Way grant. So I've called that credit description United Way Grant Credit, and I've attached it to the same revenue number. When we post the charge using this description, this revenue amount on reports will go up. When we post the credit against family accounts to pay for tuition, then that amount will go down. So eventually on reports these will zero each other out, and that's when you'll know all of the tuition grant money has been applied as scholarships to families. And lastly, I've created a special payment description here called United Way Grant Payment, so that when I post the payment, I'll use this description and it'll give me a separate payment description for depositing to that separate account. Okay, so let's get started. We'll look first at just the Family Data and Accounting module, how you would do this. I've created a special account here called United Way, just with a payer created named United Way Grant, and that's all I need on this account because all I want to do on this account is receive the revenue when it comes in. So we're going to give this a date of January 2nd. I'm going to use my description here of United Way Grant revenue to recognize the revenue coming in. This is going to be for the first quarter, and it's $2,500. And also on January 2, we received a United Way payment right there, and the check number from them was that check number there, and again for the same amount, $2,500. So that's how you would record the revenue coming in Family Data and Accounting in the special United Way account. Once you've received the money, then you would go ahead and deposit it to the correct bank account. That's done through functions Family Accounting Deposit Reports, and when I click View Current here, I only have that payment outstanding. So I would select that payment, pick the bank account, and again, here's United Way Grant account, and that's why I designated it as a deposit account. We now have a balance, and I want this to reflect as of January 2. Close the deposit report, and we're done. So now the money has been put into the bank account. How do we apply the credits? Before we start applying credits, let's run a report, and I like to run the Receivables Journal Summary Report because that shows us that account number 4060 by the period. So I'm just going to run this for the year. I'm going to save that setting so every time we come back to this report, the date will already be filled in for us. Here's our United Way grant revenue, $2,500. So if I double click that, it'll give me the detail. I have a posting of United Way grant revenue for this total amount right there. Okay, so that recognizes the revenue that goes up on the report. Let's say we want to apply some credits now to some families for some of that United Way tuition credit. Okay, I can just pick which families apply either individually here, or I could go into Functions, Quick Ledger Posting, and apply credits just to the families right here and use my description United Way grant credit and whatever date that might have happened. Well, let's say we're going to do this at the end of January for the month of January. This family received, say, 200 in credits. All I do is post that. Go to the next family. This family received 50 in credits. And let's go to the next family. Pick one here, there. And let's say that one received 50 in credits. So now we've got some credits posted. If credit should be applied weekly, consistently, week after week as part of automatic billing, you can set up the child's billing box to have your normal tuition charge and then have that charge paid off by the United Way grant credit until it's used up. That's another option for you. Let's go rerun our Receivables Journal Summary Report. Remember, the date range is the whole year. And now we're going to see a little bit different number here. We've now got 2,200 instead of 2,500. And that's because when I double click, I'll see my revenue amount is 2,500. The United Way credits that I've applied equal 300. So this 2,200 is how much is left for the first quarter allocation for that grant money. And so you should run this report periodically to make sure you're not over crediting the balance on that. So that's what you would do. That's the Receivables Journal Summary Report. That's how to handle it in the family data and accounting part. So if you get a grant for only scholarships and you're not going to use it for tracking expenses or any other kind of expenditure, you could do all of that right within family data and accounting. If, however, you're going to be using some of that grant money to purchase things through the Expenses and Ledger module, and you have the Expenses and Ledger module, then I would do a couple of things. One, in the Expenses and Ledger module, create a specific vendor here for transferring funds from the grant account into your regular bank account as needed to account for those scholarship funds that were used up. And so we've used up $300 of it so far. So we would want to take that money out of the United Way account and put it into our regular account. If you do this as a check, you can set your standard account settings right here automatically to take the money out of that special grant account and put it into your bank account. Okay, so let's go into the check, and we'll say that at the end of January we use $300. So that's what we're going to use here for our post date, our due date, and our print date. All of these are going to be the same. We're not actually writing a physical check. This is really just a transfer. And it's going to take money out of the grant checking account and put it into our primary checking account for $300. Whatever check number you'd like to use here, you'll probably use the same number for the same type of transaction. Like a transfer is always going to be check number 777 or something like that. So all I need to do here is post the check. I don't need to print anything or print it later. Just want to go ahead and account for it. Do the post check. So that takes the money out of the grant checking account and puts it into our regular checking account. That's what that vendor would be used for. And then periodically, if you purchase things for the business that are allowed expenses within the grant, then you might go ahead and pay for those directly out of the grant. Let's say we're purchasing school supplies from ABC Supply Company. I would go here, I would put in my dollar amount for the school supplies, say $300, and instead of paying for it out of my checking account, this is going to be paid for out of my United Way grant account. And again, I'd put whatever date I want here, probably for all three, same thing, and you'd record these as they occur. and I'm just going to post the check. What that does is it takes $300 for school supplies out of the United Way account. And so we'll post that as well. One of the advantages of having the expenses and ledger module to do this is that you can monitor the check register right here. You can go to the check register, go up to your United Way grant account, and see the activity on it right there. So far we've used 300 in scholarship transactions and 300 in actual purchases of supplies. So the $600 of that $2,500 grant has been used up. And those will reflect accurately on reports. And that's how to track grant monies, either using just family data and accounting by itself for scholarships only, or if you want to track expenses, you should have the expenses and ledger module as well.